The single worst day in the history of life on Earth. It is 4.5 billion times the energy of the Hiroshima bomb. It vaporized it. The explosion was just the gunshot. It wasn't the bullet that killed the planet. It was the smoke. It happened on a Tuesday. Or perhaps a Wednesday. We don't know the day of the week, but thanks to a forensic breakthrough in 2022, we know the season. It was spring in the northern hemisphere. Life was waking up. Trees were flushing new leaves. Fish were gorging themselves in the rivers. The world was loud, vibrant, and alive. And then, within minutes, the sky fell. In a muddy bank in North Dakota, 3,000 kilometers away from ground zero, we found the smoking gun. Freshwater fish, paddlefish, and sturgeon preserved in a mass grave. But look closer. Lodged in their gills are tiny spheres of glass, impact spherules. These fish breathed in molten rock that had been blasted into space and rained back down as glass bullets. They died within minutes of the impact. For decades, we told ourselves a comfortable lie about the dinosaurs. We said they were old. We said they were slow. We said they were already dying, fading away due to climate change or stupidity. We told ourselves that their extinction was a process. We were wrong. Their extinction wasn't a process. It was an event. A singular, terrifying moment that reset the biological clock of the entire planet. This isn't a story about slow decline. This is a story about the single worst day in the history of life on Earth. To understand the tragedy, you have to understand the victim. For most of the 20th century, paleontologists believed in the gradualist theory. The idea was that the late Cretaceous biosphere was a sick man. They looked at the fossil records and saw a decline in diversity starting 10 million years before the end. They argued that volcanoes in India and dropping sea levels had already pushed the dinosaurs to the brink. If the asteroid hadn't killed them, a stiff breeze would have. But that decline was a statistical illusion, a trick of the light known as the Signor-Lipps Effect. Here's the trap. Because the fossil record is incomplete, the last fossil you find of a species is almost never the last day it lived. As you get closer to the extinction boundary, we have fewer rocks to dig in. Fewer rocks mean fewer fossils. It looks like species are vanishing, but really, we just stopped seeing them. When scientists corrected for this bias in 2025, the picture changed instantly. Dinosaur diversity wasn't crashing. It was high, stable, and thriving. In the north, you had the Hell Creek Titans, Tyrannosaurus and Triceratops. In the south, giant sauropods like Alamosaurus were dominating distinct ecosystems. The data is clear. Without the asteroid, the dinosaurs would likely still be here today. They weren't a crumbling empire, they were a superpower at the height of its reign. And that makes what happened next infinitely more tragic. The Executioner was a carbonaceous chondrite asteroid roughly 10 to 15 kilometers wide. It slammed into the shallow waters of the Yucatan Peninsula, moving at 20 kilometers per second. That's not just fast, it's hypervelocity. At that speed, the atmosphere acts like a solid brick wall. The asteroid punched a hole through the sky. The kinetic energy released was 10 to the 23 joules. Let me put that number into perspective. That is 100 teratons of TNT. It is 4.5 billion times the energy of the Hiroshima bomb. It is 2 million times more powerful than the Tsar bomb, the largest nuclear weapon humans ever built. The target rock was the worst possible place to hit. The Yucatan was a thick layer of carbonate and gypsum. When the asteroid struck, it didn't just break the rock, it vaporized it. Within seconds, a transient crater 100 kilometers wide and 30 kilometers deep was excavated. The granite, deep in the Earth's crust, became fluid. It flowed like water, snapping upward to form a mountain range of peak rings in a matter of minutes. The seismic shock was magnitude 11. It rang the Earth like a bell. Thousands of kilometers away, in that river in North Dakota, massive standing waves called seiches surged upstream, burying those fish alive before the air blast even arrived. But the explosion was just the gunshot. It wasn't the bullet that killed the planet. It was the smoke. For years, we argued about the kill mechanism. Was it the fire? Was it the acid? Immediately after impact, billions of tons of molten rock were ejected into suborbital space. As they fell back to Earth, they superheated the atmosphere. This was the thermal pulse. For a few hours, the global atmosphere turned into a broiler. Temperatures spiked, igniting dry biomass. If you were a large animal standing in the open, you cooked. But recent research suggests the fires were patchy. The real killer, the silent assassin, was something far smaller. In 2023, a study in Nature Geoscience changed everything. We used to think sulfur aerosols blocked the sun, but the sulfur settled too fast. The true culprit was fine silicate dust, pulverized granite, ground down to the micrometer, launched into the stratosphere. This dust didn't settle. It stayed suspended for 15 years. It shut down photosynthesis entirely. For 2 years, light levels on the surface dropped below 1%. This was the photosynthetic shutdown. When the plants died, the herbivores died. When the herbivores died, the carnivores died. The food web didn't just break, it evaporated. Global temperatures plummeted by 15 degrees Celsius. The tropical Cretaceous world was locked in a deep freeze that lasted a decade. And in the oceans, the nightmare was chemical. The vaporized gypsum released torrents of sulfur, turning the oceans into acid. The pH dropped. Creatures that built shells out of calcium carbonate, like ammonites and plankton, literally dissolved. 90% of the ocean's plankton died. The marine ecosystem collapsed from the bottom up. This is where the story becomes cruel. Survival wasn't just about fitness, it was about timing. Remember that fishbone analysis? The impact hit during the northern hemisphere spring. In the north, animals were in their most vulnerable state. They were mating, growing, and raising young. Their metabolic demands were at their peak. When the darkness hit, they had no reserves. They hit a wall. But in the southern hemisphere, it was autumn. Life there was already preparing for winter. Animals were fatting up. Some were entering torpor or hibernation. They were biologically prepped for a long sleep. This serendipity explains a massive discrepancy. Ecosystems in Patagonia and New Zealand recovered twice as fast as those in North America. If the asteroid had struck 6 months later, the history of life on Earth might look completely different. So, who survived? You needed to be small. No land animal larger than 25 kilograms made it. You needed to be a scavenger. And you needed to be lucky. The only dinosaurs that survived were the birds, but not all birds. The toothed birds, the ones that ate insects or meat, died out. The winners were the ground-dwelling birds with beaks. Why? Because when the forests died and the insects vanished, there was one food source left: seeds. Seeds can last for decades in the soil. Beaked birds were the only ones equipped to crack them open. The seed bank was their lifeboat. The immediate aftermath was a world of ghosts. The fossil record shows a fern spike. Ferns are disaster plants. They love disturbed, low-light soil. For centuries, the earth was carpeted in nothing but ferns. And there was something else, a fungal spike. Fungi are saprotrophs. They eat dead matter. And the earth was covered in death. The fungi bloomed in a massive global compost heap, recycling the bodies of the giants to prepare the soil for the new tenants. And with the dinosaurs gone, the prison doors were thrown open for the mammals. For millions of years, mammals had been kept small, nocturnal, and terrified. Now the world was empty. Within 300,000 years, mammalian body mass tripled. Within 700,000 years, the first megafauna appeared. The Cenozoic era, the age of mammals, had begun.
We often look at the dinosaur extinction as a story of failure. But the data tells us it was a story of chance. The dinosaurs didn't do anything wrong. They didn't fail to adapt. They were simply in the wrong place at the wrong time when the sky fell. If that asteroid had arrived 30 minutes later, the rotation of the Earth would have meant it hit the deep Pacific or Atlantic Ocean. No vaporized gypsum, no acid rain, much less dust. The dinosaurs likely would have survived. And us? We would still be shrews, scurrying in the dark, terrified of the monsters above. We are the children of the catastrophe. Our existence is built on the ashes of a burning world. The extinction of the dinosaurs wasn't just the end of an era. It was the violent, accidental birth of our own.